Good morning or afternoon, as the case may be. We'll have a lecture on introduction to tissues, first off, and then we'll have another one on the epithelial tissues as we get started. Your body is made up of four different types of tissues, and we'll talk about that on the last slide. We have a little intro here from Hannibal Lecter. So regardless of whether you like liver like Hannibal Lecter or just plain muscle tissue or other internal organs that might get pickled or eaten from other animals that you eat, all cells make up tissues, and we have four tissues that make up the human body. And each one of those tissues has cells that are specialized to perform some function. In the last couple of days in lab, you've been studying epithelial tissue and connective tissue. And so the study of those tissues is called histology, and that's what you've been doing. And we'll continue to do as we look at muscle tissue and nervous tissue to wrap up this particular chapter. The cells of our tissues are held together by several different connectors, if you will. They're called intercellular junctions, and there are three types we're going to talk about here: tight junctions, desmosomes, and gap junctions. Tight junctions are connectors that link cells together. They're sort of like spot weld or zipper-like junction, and they prevent material from leaking through across a barrier. Or they line a particular area. So tight junctions are involved with the cells that line our small intestine. We don't want things being leaked through into our cavity, but we want them to be absorbed into our bloodstream. Kidney tubules would be the same, or our blood-brain barrier. Um, uh, there are a number of things that we don't want to get through from our bloodstream or the capillary system of our bloodstream in our brain specifically to get across, because there are so many toxic chemicals that come into our system. So we have a very unique system specifically in our brain with these tight junctions, so things can't move across that barrier. And probably in the last 2 decades, scientists have come up with a number of ways to trick, if you will, therapeutic like chemotherapy type drugs or other neural stimulators or neurodepressants to stimulate or suppress activity that's taking place in the brain. And so we load the chemical or attach the chemical to some other a particle. Maybe it's like a fat or some other particle that can move across that blood-brain barrier. And so we've realized some success in this area to treat a number of things like brain cancers and a number of different things like Alzheimer's disease and memory loss and things like that using this kind of technology. The second intercellular junction is desmosomes. These spot welds allow for a little flexibility, and they hold cells together, but have some give to them, unlike the tight junctions. We find these in our skin, all over in it, and specifically our outer skin, from our epidermis or dermis, and then our dermal to our subcutaneous layer, and allows some flexibility in our skin to move, change shape. And over time, these desmosomes break down, and they're one of the things that allow us or cause us to have wrinkles, the breakdown of these desmosomes as we age over the decades. The third one are gap junctions. Gap junctions, as you can see in the lower parts here, form little tubes that allow cells to communicate with each other. We see these mainly in our digestive system, where our smooth muscle has to communicate with connecting muscles in order to be able to contract, and we'll talk about that process of peristaltic wave-like motion, moving our digested material along our small intestine to be absorbed, but also in our cardiac muscle, because we want our atria, both right and left. We want them to contract at the same time, forcing blood into our ventricles, and then we want those ventricles to contract at the same time. And all those muscle cells need to be able to communicate with each other so they do, in fact, contract at the same time. Our last slide here just goes over the four tissue types that make up our organs, and there are only four tissue types. So we have the epithelial tissue, which basically covers or lines our organs, or our exterior part like our skin. Connective tissue, which connects different tissues together, sometimes allows for support. This is probably the largest of the four tissues as far as diversity goes in the types of tissues. And then we have muscle tissue, three types of muscle tissue that allow for movement, whether that's the movement of our blood, the movement of our food, or the movement of our body. And then the last one, which we won't spend very much time on, is the nervous tissue, which controls all the functions, sends signals, takes in information, and we'll spend a whole set of chapters on that. So that's the introduction for this chapter, and we'll continue with the next segment on epithelial tissue.